High above Manhattan, inside the penthouse of a glittering tower, Julian Tran, a young Vietnamese-American billionaire known for his ruthless business acumen and icy demeanor, attended a private cocktail party among New York's financial elite. Crystal chandeliers reflected off his tailored Armani suit as he stood with Jack Coleman, his college friend turned low-key rival. As the clock struck 9 and they poured their third glass of whiskey, Jack leaned in. "You've gotten too used to winning everything, Julian." Julian smirked. "I'm just better at the game," Jack grinned. "Then let's play one you can't calculate. I dare you to marry someone completely outside your usual type. No beauty, no status, just real." Julian raised an eyebrow. "What's in it for me?" 6 months. Stay married. Make her fall for you. If you do it, I'll wire 10 million. To your account. If not, you donate the same to the recovery fund for businesses you've crushed." Julian was silent. Then he laughed softly. "Send me her file." Jack sipped his drink. "Her name is Amira Nguyen, a librarian, with a past you'll never see coming." Amira Nguyen lived in a modest apartment in Queens, surrounded by books. Once a literature student. At Columbia, she now worked at a small public library, not because she lacked ambition, but because silence suited her better than noise. One afternoon, a letter arrived, handwritten, inked in sepia, from Julian Tran. A meeting invitation. Cryptic explanations about a contractual marriage. She smirked. She already knew Jack Coleman had approached her weeks ago, not to coerce, but to offer something tempting, the chance to quietly turn the tables on a man who once destroyed her family. Julian Tran had been the signature behind a deal that collapsed her father's business. This time, she thought, he'll learn what it's like to lose control. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her navy blue dress. She was ready to meet Julian Tran Le Bernardin. Elegant lighting, velvet chairs. Julian sat alone, eyes scanning each arrival like a chess master studying the board. When Amira entered, he raised an eyebrow. Not at her appearance, but at the way she held herself. Steady, unintimidated. She walked to the table, pulled the chair and sat without hesitation. "I'm Amira, and I know exactly why we're here." Julian offered a polite smile. "Refreshing." "I dislike pretense." Amira nodded. "I agree, 6 months, that's the deal. But I have conditions, no intimacy, no control. I keep my life, I go to work, I read at night. You don't interfere." Julian tilted his head. "No one's ever set terms when I proposed." "Now someone has." A moment of silence. Julian extended his hand. "Deal?" Amira shook it. Cold, firm, calculated. 3 weeks later, they married. A sterile, private ceremony at a Hamptons estate. No guests, no flowers, just a lawyer, a 3-page agreement, and 2 signatures. Afterward, Julian drove Amira to his penthouse. Neither spoke. He opened the door. She stepped inside, removed her shoes, and glanced around. Beautiful, but cold. Julian blinked. Most were dazzled. She placed her bag on the couch. "I'll sleep in the right wing. You don't have to pretend to be a husband. I won't be pretending to be a wife." He watched her walk away into a room no one had entered but him. For the first time in years, Julian felt intrigued, not by looks but by resistance. He whispered to himself, "What game is she playing?" The morning after their wedding, Julian found the apartment strangely quiet. He stepped out of his master bedroom and followed the scent of freshly brewed coffee. In the kitchen, Amira stood in a long cardigan, her hair pulled back in a loose bun, sipping from a ceramic mug while reading a thick volume. She didn't glance up. "Morning," Julian said. "Morning," she echoed, still immersed in the book. No fanfare, no forced familiarity. Julian watched her, then quietly poured himself a coffee. This was not what he expected. He'd envisioned coldness, maybe even defiance, but what unsettled him more was the calm, as if she had lived here her whole life. Over the next few days, the rhythm stayed the same. Amira woke early, read by the windows, and went to work at a local community library she had insisted on keeping. Julian, used to controlling people's time, offered a driver, a stylist, an assistant. She declined them all. "You married me, Julian," she said once. "Not my schedule." He didn't reply. But something in her tone made it clear. He wasn't the one running this arrangement. Julian, growing frustrated, tried a different tactic. Gifts, luxury, influence, a designer handbag delivered to her room, left unopened. A reservation at the most exclusive rooftop bar, declined. A rare first edition Jane Austen novel. That she kept, but without a thank you. At work, he had one of his managers drop by the library to offer her a promotion at a major private institution. She smiled and said, "Tell Mr. Tran I declined his puppet strings." Julian stared at the report later that night, incredulous. Jack's voice echoed in his memory. "You're not used to being the one outplayed." He had once thought this marriage was a power game, but Amira wasn't playing. Or maybe she was, playing something deeper, older and far beyond his rules. One evening, Julian entered his private office to find the door ajar. Amira was inside, standing by a shelf, holding a manila folder labeled Nguyen & Sons, Liquidation 2015. She turned, eyes steady. "I was looking for something to read." Julian's mouth went dry. "That's confidential." "So is grief," she said quietly, placing the folder back. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop and pulled up archived records. Nguyen & Sons. The name stirred something vague. A small logistics firm. Acquired. Dismantled. Absorbed into Tran Holdings. The CEO, Dung Nguyen, Amira's father. Julian closed the laptop and stared into the dark ceiling. The deal had been standard, but the fallout he never looked, never cared, until now. A week later, Amira agreed to join him for dinner in the main dining room. The table, designed for 12, felt cavernous. With only 2 plates, the conversation was strained until Julian cleared his throat. "Tell me something real about your father." Amira cut her steak slowly. He loved crossword puzzles and classical guitar. He played Albanese every Sunday morning. Julian blinked. He hadn't expected an answer. She continued. "After he died, I couldn't hear Spanish guitar without crying." He sat still, unsure how to respond. Silence filled the room again. Then she asked softly, "Do you remember the names of the companies you've broken?" Julian swallowed. "Not all of them." Amira looked at him, not with anger, but with the absence of anything. That was worse. The emptiness, the moral vacancy she'd discovered in him. And in that gaze, for the first time, Julian felt what it was like to be measured and found lacking. Julian stared into the mirror the next morning. His tailored shirt hung slightly looser. He hadn't shaved. His eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of something unfamiliar. Amira's voice broke the silence. "You're unraveling." He didn't turn around. "Maybe I need to." Amira entered the room, arms folded. "Or maybe you just need to admit you're not the man you thought you were." Julian drove Amira back to her old neighborhood. Queens was buzzing with weekend traffic, kids playing ball, neighbors arguing over stoops. Amira pointed out her childhood window. "My mother used to hang wind chimes right there. Said it reminded her the world was still moving." Julian nodded, absorbing everything. Inside the local diner, the owner greeted Amira with a warm embrace. Julian watched her laugh, freely, not cautiously, like at the penthouse. Back in the car, Julian asked, "What do you see when you look at me?" Amira was quiet. Then, "A man terrified he might have a soul." That night, Julian dreamt of thunder and paper, contracts raining from the sky like ash. Amira walked beneath them in silence, untouched. He awoke alone. Later, he wandered into the kitchen where Amira was brewing tea. "Bad dream?" she asked. He hesitated. "Something like that." They sat in silence. The only sound was the soft bubbling of the kettle. The silence began to weigh heavier. Julian tried to draw her in. Fresh flowers, breakfasts prepared the way she liked, a book left on her nightstand. But Amira responded only with politeness, not warmth. Finally, one evening, as rain tapped the windows, Julian stood at the doorway of her room. "What do you want from me?" Amira closed the book in her lap. "Nothing you can give, not unless you destroy the version of yourself that made this marriage necessary." He swallowed hard. "And if I do?" Then maybe we can begin something honest. But I won't wait forever. For the first time, Julian realized this wasn't about winning. It was about becoming someone worth staying for. The next morning, Amira found Julian in the library, still dressed in the suit from the night before. He hadn't slept. Books were scattered across the floor. Among them, a single folder, Nguyen and Sons. "I read everything," he said without looking up. Amira didn't move. "And?" "I never knew, never cared to know. I saw numbers, not people." She stepped forward. "That's not an excuse, no, but it's the truth, and I needed to start there." He held up the folder. "This company. I crushed it because it was easy. Because I could. I never thought who was behind it, who I was hurting." She watched him, unmoving. "My father was behind that company," she said quietly. Julian lowered the folder. "I know now. I know now."
Days passed without confrontation. They ate meals in silence, shared space without tension. But the quiet wasn't peace, it was anticipation. Julian began cancelling meetings, he declined calls, sat with her during breakfast. He started reading. The books she left out: Baldwin, Morrison, Didion. One afternoon, Amira found him on the balcony, lost in a copy of The Fire Next Time. "That's a painful book," she said. "I know, but I need to read it." Their eyes met. Neither looked away. That night, she didn't close the door to her bedroom all the way. Jack returned to the penthouse with a smirk and a bottle of champagne. "So how's the experiment?" Julian took the bottle, but didn't open it. "This isn't a game anymore." Jack scoffed. "Don't tell me you're catching feelings." Julian stayed quiet. Jack's smile faded. "You think she cares? She's using this marriage to elevate herself." "You really believe she's here for anything else?" Julian replied, cold and measured. "She's the only honest one in this." Jack narrowed his eyes, suddenly wary. "Be careful, Jules. Sometimes the truth is the sharpest knife." That night, thunder rolled over the city. Amira stood by the window, watching the lightning fracture the skyline. Julian approached, standing beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I used to love storms, felt powerful watching them. Now I feel small. And it's strange, I don't hate it." Amira turned toward him. "That's what truth does. It shrinks your ego," Julian gave a faint smile. "Stay. Talk to me." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. And in the silence between thunderclaps they began talking, not as enemies or pawns, but as two people stranded in the same storm, searching for shelter in each other. In the days that followed, Amira began to lower her guard, just enough for Julian to notice. They shared meals without words, then eventually with words. Short ones, then longer ones. One evening she brought him a photo album, one he'd never seen before. Inside, images of her childhood, her parents, holidays in crowded rooms. Joy. "That was my father's smile," she said, pointing to a picture of a man holding a kite. Julian held the photo longer than necessary. "He looks like a builder, someone who gave more than he had." "He did. And then you took the rest." She didn't say it with anger, just truth. Julian nodded, accepting it. One morning, Julian found an envelope on his pillow. No name, just his initials. Inside, a letter, handwritten. "Julian, you once asked what I wanted. I lied when I said nothing. I want to believe people can change. I want to believe in forgiveness, not just survival. I want to believe you see me, not as a game or a protest, but as a person who never wanted revenge, only truth. Don't prove me wrong." Julian read the letter 3 times, then he placed it in his wallet. He would carry it with him everywhere. Julian. returned to the boardroom for the first time in weeks. Investors were restless. The media had caught wind of internal shifts. "Are we still leading?" asked one executive. "We are," Julian replied. "But we'll lead differently now," he announced. A complete audit. A plan to reinvest in communities, to reevaluate old acquisitions. Profits would dip, he warned, but this time he didn't flinch. Back at the penthouse, Amira watched the press conference from her laptop. When Julian returned, she didn't say anything. She just handed him a cup of tea. That weekend, Julian invited Amira to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. It was cold. Tourists passed by. She wore a long coat, scarf tucked tightly. He walked a step behind. "Why here?" she asked. "My father brought me once. Said the bridge connects more than boroughs. It connects decisions." They stopped at the midpoint. Beneath them, the East River flowed silent and fast. "I never asked," Julian said, his voice quiet. "Why did you agree to the bet? Why go through with it?" Amira looked out over the water. "Because I wanted to see if a man like you could ever become something better. And because I needed to know if forgiveness was real, or just a story we tell ourselves." Julian turned toward her. "And now?" "Now, I'm still watching." They stood there, wind cutting between them. Two people on a bridge, suspended between the past and what might come next. 6 months to the day since they signed the contract. Julian woke early. He cooked breakfast himself, eggs, sourdough toast, sautéed mushrooms, and served it on the terrace. No staff. Just him. Amira emerged quietly. Her eyes lingered on the table, then on him. "You remembered?" "I remember everything now." Sat, took a bite. "Said nothing at first. Then? What happens when the contract ends?" Julian reached into his coat, pulled out a different kind of paper. "This isn't a contract," he said. "It's a letter, no conditions, just how I feel." He handed it to her and walked away. She didn't open it immediately. The media discovered the bet. Not the details, but enough to start speculating. The marriage gamble ran across tabloid headlines. A disgruntled ex-employee leaked fragments of emails. Julian called a press conference. He didn't deny it. "I entered into something shameful. I treated a person like a challenge. But I've changed. And if you don't believe me, that's okay. But I'm not hiding anymore." Back home, Amira watched the stream. She sat down and opened the letter Julian had given her. It began, "I met you as a bet, but now I see you as my mirror." One night, Amira disappeared. No note. No message. Just absence. Julian called everyone, her friends, the doorman, even the staff. No one knew. The penthouse felt like a museum of memory. Her mug still on the table. Her book on the armrest. Hours passed. Then just after 2 a.m., she returned. "I needed to be alone," she said. "To think. To remember who I was before all this." Julian stepped closer. "And who are you now?" "Someone who's still deciding." Weeks later, Julian received a package on his birthday. No card, no return address. Inside, a small clay sculpture. A phoenix, wings half-formed. He held it like a relic. Later that day, Amira walked into the penthouse with her own key. He hadn't changed the locks. "You got it?" she asked. Julian nodded. "I did. It's beautiful." "It's unfinished," she said. "Like us?" He placed it on the mantel. "Then let's finish it." "Together?" She didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. It was past midnight when Julian woke to the scent of smoke. Not fire, candles. The living room was filled with them, flickering softly. In the center, Amira stood in silence, staring at a canvas she'd been painting. "You never told me you—"
"Painted," he whispered. She turned slightly. "I never had a reason to." He walked toward her.
The painting was abstract, but he could feel the storm in it. "Is that us?" "No, it's me. Before all this." Julian nodded, accepting the hidden meaning. "And now?" She looked at him. "Still painting?" Julian hosted a dinner at a non-profit he'd recently invested in. A quiet place dedicated to single mothers and young entrepreneurs. He invited Amira. She wore a simple dress, no makeup, and still looked like a queen. During the toast, Julian said, "I used to believe legacy was about wealth."
"I now believe it's about what you give away, not what you keep." Applause. Cameras clicked. Amira smiled, sipping her wine. "Later, alone," she whispered. "That was the first time I believed you." Julian's throat tightened. "Then it was worth—"
Every word. Autumn arrived. Amira's mother fell ill. She left for Detroit to care for her. Julian offered to come, but she declined. "This is my space."
"My family, I want to support you." "Then don't follow. Just wait." He respected that. For the first time, he understood love wasn't pursuit. It was presence. Even from a distance, he called nightly, sent flowers, but didn't overstep. She replied with short messages.
But one day, she sent a photo, her hand on her mother's. Julian stared at it for hours. 3 weeks passed. One rainy evening, Amira returned to New York. No warning. She found Julian reading, glasses on, papers scattered. "You look like an old man," she teased. He smiled, stunned. "You came back?" She nodded. "She's stable now, but that time reminded me who I am." Julian stood up, slowly. "And who is that?" "A woman who forgives, but never forgets." "I can live with that," he said. She dropped her bag, walked into his arms, and for once there were no more words needed. In a dusty corner of the penthouse, a room Julian hadn't entered in years, Amira wandered in one morning. It was filled with old photographs, trophies, and unopened letters, relics from a life Julian had buried. "What is this place?" she asked. "The room of things I never wanted to remember." She picked up a photo. A much younger Julian, smiling beside his late father. "Why hide it?" "Because it reminded me of what I wasn't." Amira sat down on the floor. "Maybe it's time to become what he hoped you'd be." They argued. It wasn't loud, just cold, distant. Julian had missed an important therapy session they were supposed to attend together. "You keep saying you've changed, but you still avoid the hard stuff," Amira said, arms folded. "I panicked. I wasn't ready." "Then what are we doing here?" That night, she slept in the guest room. In the silence, Julian felt old fears return, abandonment, inadequacy. But he didn't chase her. He waited, and in the morning, she returned to the kitchen without a word. While cleaning the forgotten room, Amira found a box of unsent letters, all addressed to Julian's mother. She read one, then two, then all of them. Each one painted a portrait of a boy who never knew how to grieve, who only learned to replace feeling with ambition. When Julian entered and saw her reading, he froze. "I was never enough for her," he whispered. Amira reached out, handed him a letter. You were. You just didn't know it. They sat together, quietly, surrounded by the ghosts he'd finally faced. That night, thunder cracked over Manhattan. Julian stood on the balcony, soaked, eyes closed. Lightning flashed above. Inside, Amira watched him for a long time. Then she joined him. "What
are you doing?"
she shouted through the storm, "letting it wash over me." She stood beside him, took his hand. "We can't erase the past, Julian, I know. But we can rewrite tomorrow." He looked at her, drenched and glowing in the lightning. "Then let's start tonight." They stood there, rain pouring down, as if the city itself had decided to cleanse them both. Julian sat across from his board of directors, men and women who had once admired his ruthlessness. He handed over his resignation.
"I built this company on power and fear," he said. "I don't want to lead that way anymore." Stunned silence. One executive whispered, "What will you do now?" Julian looked out the window where Amira waited in the car below. "Start again, from honesty." He walked away, lighter than ever before. Amira's non-profit had expanded.
Julian began volunteering there, quietly, not as a CEO, but as a man trying to rebuild. They worked side by side, creating programs for young women in underserved communities. One afternoon, while painting a classroom wall together, Amira turned to him. "You're different now." "I hope so. I believe you." He smiled. "I love you, Amira. I know, I love you too. But now let's show it to the world." The ceremony was small. Just close friends, a garden, and the sound of laughter. No cameras, no spectacle, only truth. Amira wore a soft cream dress. Julian wore no tie. When they exchanged vows, neither mentioned the past.
"Only the future. I vow to never treat your heart like a wager again," Julian said. "And I vow to remind you who you are when you forget," Amira replied. After the kiss, they walked barefoot across the grass, hand in hand. There were no fireworks, just
peace. And the knowledge that this time it was real. The end.